NFL Films senior producer Greg Cosell back here on the program. How are you, Greg?
Rich, I'd rather talk about the streets of San Francisco. You remember that show?
Michael Douglas and Carl Malden.
And Carl Malden, one of the all-time greats.
Oh, yes. Well, I'll put a pin in that for 16 minutes from now.
One of my favorite shows growing up.
Well, you know what? Michael Douglas has been at it for a while. I Zoomed with him yesterday, and we're going to play that with him. We're going to play that conversation with him shortly. I did ask him what his oldest residual check is, and actually it predates Streets of San Francisco. So that's how far it goes back. Yes, that's an answer that's coming on the show.
All right.
Well, speaking of dusting off tape, let's talk about Jordan Love's tape. Because I think this is where this is headed, at least for Green Bay, as they're playing out their end of this gambit right now. Is like, okay, we drafted him. He might not be ready, but we're going to go for it. What was your evaluation of Jordan Love going into the 2020 draft? Because we didn't see him suit up at all last year, Greg.
Well, I watched Jordan Love's 2018 tape and his 2019 tape. And I remember in the summer when I watched his 2018 tape, I really thought that he was a high-level prospect. I thought he had arm strength. I thought he had pace and touch. I thought he threw the ball with good accuracy. I thought he was athletic. He could move. I thought he was an easy, natural thrower. So coming off the 2018 tape, before his 2019 season, I said to myself, if this guy has a really good 2019 season, this guy could be a top 5 pick. And then we got to 2019. And 2019 was not as good. The traits are still there because traits tend to be traits, Rich. It's not as if all of a sudden he had a bad arm. But there were a number of issues that prevented him from being as consistent as he was in 2018. And I thought that he had mechanical issues with his footwork. I thought that he did not throw consistently with a firm base, and he was not on balance. And when you don't throw with a firm base and you're not on balance, your accuracy really gets impacted in a negative way. I thought he had a tendency to drift to his left when he threw the ball, so he would kind of lean to his left rather than standing straight up and delivering. I thought he dropped his arm angle when he didn't need to. So all of a sudden he developed these mechanical issues that really impacted his consistency, his ability to play to his what are essentially scheme-transcendent traits. So obviously I'm not there in Green Bay. I don't know what happened last year when he was a rookie. I don't know what they're working on with him. But he has strong quarterback traits. The question is, can they come out?
So when he was coming out in 2020, where did you place him amongst the 2020 draftees that eventually went? We all know Burrow and Tua and Herbert at the top. Where did you put?
Yeah,
Jordan
I didn't put him at that level, even though his traits would have suggested that he could be at that level. I don't remember specifically how I had them mapped out.
Right.
But he was not that guy. But he's one of those guys to me that's difficult, and this is where it gets hard when you're in the evaluation of quarterbacks, because you can look at Love and you say, wow, this guy's got a lot to work with. And this is where you have to know the player, talk to the player, see him throw live, go through the entire process, which I don't do, obviously. I don't work for a team.
Right.
And that helps you. So I don't know what the result of that was for teams. Obviously, the Packers saw something because they traded up to get him in the first round when they had Aaron Rodgers in his prime on their roster. But I think we know how Matt LaFleur really would like to play because they drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round. And they have A.J. Dillon, they have Aaron Jones. So I think he wants to start his offense with the run game and have the quarterback work off that. And there's many, many ways to do that effectively and still have your quarterback be a big factor. But, I think they're telling you that Matt LaFleur is kind of telling you how he envisions his offense.
So, Greg Cosell here on the Rich Eisen Show. Where would you have placed Jordan Love in the 2021 draft class that we're all more freshly familiar with? You, us, the listeners, viewers of this program. Where would you have placed Jordan Love amongst the 5 that went in the first round and the top half of the first round this year, Greg?
I think you'd still have to put Trevor Lawrence at the top. I think Wilson probably would go before Love. But I think in some ways you could say that from a skill set perspective, now,
yes,
again,
of course.
that you could say that Love and Justin Fields probably have some similarities. Now, I think the way, don't forget, Fields had some very inconsistent moments as well in the 2020 season. He also had some special moments, which Love did not have those special moments in his 2019 tape, whereas Fields had some special moments in 2020.
What about
Fields
Lance?
Coming back from the injury, and really showing something, that toughness, mental and physical toughness, I think that raised his profile in the minds of a lot of people.
What about Lance? What about Trey Lance, Greg? Where do you place Jordan Love?
Yeah,
with
I
Trey
like
Lance?
Trey Lance traits a lot, and he's certainly. I would say that Love is a better thrower than Lance in terms of when they came out. That's what I'm talking about.
No, and that's and I understand that that's the conundrum of this conversation, Greg. Is that but again, Love is technically coming out. You know what I mean? Like there was no tape on him last year. He did not play. He didn't dress. I mean, he was number 3 all year long. I mean, he's gotten reps on scout team. Aaron Jones was on the show a couple weeks ago when I was kicking the tires on any possibility of revealing the relationship in Green Bay, and he said that Rodgers was terrific with Love and mentoring him and answering questions and pointing things out to him when they were on a practice field. But other than that, I mean, we are really in the first blush evaluation with him in the same way that we haven't seen Lance play a snap since obviously week 1 of the then COVID canceled season. We haven't seen Love play a snap since 2019. And
you're right.
So,
and I think that Love is an easy thrower, a natural thrower, more so than Lance. Lance gives you much more in the quarterback run game. Lance has more second reaction, movement, improvisational ability. Like I said, I thought Love was a really intriguing prospect. There's no question that there were meaningful inconsistencies in his game, but I've talked to a lot of coaches over the years, as you well know, Rich, and very few guys come out where you feel like this guy's really ready to play. So then it comes to how is he coached? What system is he in? How can you help him by defining things for him clearly as he's learning the position at the NFL level? So there's so many factors that go into play, and I can guarantee that Green Bay, that coaching staff, that entire staff and organization, they have a sense of Jordan Love because they're with him every day. We're not. All I have is the last time I saw him play, which was 2019 in college.
Greg Cosell here on the Rich Eisen Show. And again, I know you don't work for a team, as you pointed out. You work for NFL Films, but you've been around the block, to say the least. If a team was interested in acquiring Jordan Love, what type of prospect would you say? He'd be ready to play in a year? He's ready to play maybe now? I mean, again, I know you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but like if there is somebody that has a year or two to play with, potentially 1 year to play with their veteran quarterback, say Pittsburgh, Washington, another team that gets mentioned a lot these days because, we're twiddling our thumbs waiting to get some sort of resolution on all this in the media, is Atlanta. Certainly with Julio Jones needing to maybe move elsewhere based on his desires as well as the cap space and problem that Atlanta has. What would you say to a team that might be just, let's take a flyer on calling Gutekunst for this guy in case he wants to get out from his Rodgers problem?
Well, assuming normal development with Jordan Love, I would think that he'd be ready to play. And when I say ready to play, I don't mean he'll be a top 10 quarterback, Rich. I mean, but he's been in the league for a year. He's seen one of the best ever perform, both in practice and in games. Mm-hmm. And I'm told by someone who was on the coaching staff there in Green Bay for years that Rodgers is the smartest quarterback that he's ever seen, just in his ability to see things at the speed with which you need to see things. Love was basically a 3-year starter in college, at least 2.5 years. So it's not as if you're dealing with a kid that did not have meaningful college experience. So many of these kids now are coming out with 15 starts, 16 starts, 17 starts. Love had 30-plus starts, if I'm not mistaken. So he has meaningful college experience. He's been in the league for a year, you would have to assume, and teams would know this because everybody knows what's going on with every other team, but you'd have to assume that this kid is ready to line up and take a snap in meaningful games. Now, then you'd have to decide what you want your offense to look like if he's your quarterback and how you need to help him work through the process, but you'd have to believe he's ready to play.
So are the Packers constituted to support him? Should he have to go in 2021?
Well,
what do you think?
I would think that the answer to that, in a very general sense, would be yes, because, as I said, they drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round for a reason. They re-signed Aaron Jones. You could almost look at their backfield in some ways like the Saints, where A.J. Dillon is kind of the Latavius Murray, and then Jones is kind of the Kamara. Because last year, Jones kind of morphed and evolved into a guy that they were not going to feature as a foundation back with 250, 280 carries. He was going to be more of a 170 to 200 carry guy, and they were going to have a second back. And now you have A.J. Dillon. The key for that kind of thing is also your defense, because the last thing you want with Love is to be in situations where you feel as if you have to drop him back by choice 35, 40 times a game.
Yeah. Rather have Rodgers if that's the case, huh?
Well, no question. And I thought Rodgers, quite honestly, I thought he was phenomenal last year.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I thought he was so good playing within the structure of that offense. He just, to me, you know, you kind of lose sight of how really good he was.
I know. Even with the MVP, I agree with you. So before I let you go, Greg, now that we're through the draft, which prospect do you think is in the position, scheme-wise, to be highly successful, Herbert-like? You're
talking about the quarterback,
yes,
right?
sir. Which quarterback wound up in the spot where you're like, okay, I think we've got a possibility to get a highly successful surprise season out of this person, even if it doesn't amount to wins, but just... Well,
I'll tell you the guy, and I'm, you know, it's the end of May, Rich, so we don't know the answer to any of this.
Correct.
We just started, you know, with OTAs and all that stuff now, so we have no idea. You know, teams say a lot of things now just because they have to.
Yes.
I really think Trey Lance is in a really good position, and I don't know if he'll be the starter. We really don't know. Obviously, they still have Jimmy Garoppolo, and the assumption is that Jimmy Garoppolo is the starter. But I think if Trey Lance has a really, really good offseason and training camp, it would not surprise me to see Trey Lance end up being the starter sooner than later. And I think he's in a really good position with that team. They've got a plethora of running backs, really good backs. They've got an improved offensive line. They've got weapons on the outside. They've got Kittle. I mean, I think this team offensively is a fascinating team. And they've got Kyle Shanahan, who is such a good designer of offense with a great understanding of how to deploy his personnel. I actually think Trey Lance is in a really fascinating situation.
You imagine they get Julio Jones too, Greg? You imagine if that happens?
Yeah, and of course, Julio, I guess, played for Kyle for a year, maybe two, but I know it was for at least a year, obviously. So, I mean, who knows how that's going to play out. The Falcons are in salary cap hell.
Yes, they are. And there's one way out of it, and the one certainly that involves a player who potentially unwittingly, it seems, saying, I'm out of there.
Apparently does not want to be there from what we've heard.
Well, I guess it's what we did here. Greg, thanks for the call. Really appreciate it. We'll check back in during the summer again. Thanks again.
Thanks, Rich. Really appreciate it.
You bet. I follow Greg Cosell on Twitter, @Greg Cosell. You should too. Right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.